Shut down, locked away the tears. I made friends with all my fears. Slow down, more than I appear. Too long, too long. You played along, showed me to love. I followed you out of the dark. Had nothing to believe in, and now I know there's something Shadows followed me around, sat and watched me as I drowned. Let go, waiting to be found. Don't go now. You played along, showed me to love. I followed you out of the dark. Had nothing to believe in, but now I know there's something to believe in, had nothing to believe in, had nothing to believe in, but now I know there's something